What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to an FM20 video showing the top 10 features that I am most excited about in Football Manager 2020. I was given a chance by Sports Interactive to get hands-on with the game early. I'm going to be showing you today some of the things that I was most excited about. The footage you are going to see is alpha footage. It's subject to change. Some of these are huge new additions. Some of these are just small little tweaks, but it's the little things in Football Manager that I tend to get most excited about. Let me know if any of these really stand out to you, what you're looking forward to most about this year's game, and well, without further ado, let's get into this. So coming in at number 10, we have the improvements to the tactical analysis overlays. This is a tiny little feature, but I think for new players especially, it's going to be huge. Basically, when you're looking at the tactical screen and you go on the analysis overlay, you're now given more detail as to what the red squares mean in certain areas of the pitch, where it says you've got a weakness. It'll tell you which players are involved and kind of responsible for that area of the pitch and how big that responsibility is for them. It can be high, medium, or low kind of positive influence. And it really helps to give you a better understanding of how positions and roles interact with each other, which I think is going to be really good for building a new tactic. You can see where there might be gaps in your team, but it just gives you a little bit more detail. It's a lot more user-friendly. And it was one of those little additions which I found myself leaning on more and more in a kind of unexpected way. Certainly one of those features that I didn't realise I needed until I saw it. And then I was like, I needed this all my life. So yes, that is number 10. It's not the biggest one, but it is one of those little ones which I think absolutely everyone is going to make use of. Anyway, in at number 9, we have the new layouts to the kind of team report stuff. In terms of match analysis, more than ever, that information has been streamlined down. I can't really speak for everyone, but for me personally, sometimes looking at the analysis of previous matches just felt massively overwhelming. The new team analysis pages really boil it down into simpler pages to see. You can look through individual matches at a much quicker rate to see the bad, the ugly, where stuff might not be going quite right. And I think it's going to make spotting stuff and iterating on tactics that little bit easier. It's one of those instances where there's not anything too drastically new here, but it's just boiled down into a lot easier way to digest. And I found myself using it in FM20's alpha more than I had in the entirety of FM19, which in my opinion is a pretty big win. In at number 8, we have the revamped staff responsibilities. This is something that has been an issue for Football Manager, I think, in years. A lot of people, they'll say, I want a more stripped down game. I want a simpler game, a game where I don't have to do as much. I feel overwhelmed. This year, you can really tailor your Football Manager experience to exactly how you want, and you can do that by delegating all kinds of tasks to different staff. There are new staff members in the game, such as loan managers now, so if you don't want to be dealing with loaning out youngsters, you can leave that to a dedicated staff member. And it really allows you to tailor your experience for how you want to do things. Of course, in the past, you could have an assistant take friendly matches, attend press conferences. In this year's game, that stuff is all there and laid out in an easier to find manner. But the big thing for me really is the fact that there's just stuff way beyond that you can delegate. And so you can really tailor your Football Manager experience to do the stuff that you want to do and nothing more. And it's going to help you get through seasons quicker. It's going to help you feel less overwhelmed if you're a new player getting started. And I really feel like it's a much welcome addition to this year's game. Coming in at number 7, we have the new individual training focuses. This again is a really minor one. Of course, if you played FM19, you probably, like me, got irked a little bit at the fact there wasn't really any individual training focuses for goalkeepers. This year that is different. There is a variety of new goalkeeping training focuses for stuff like handling, aerial ability, which is obviously a really welcome addition to the game in terms of helping you develop your goalkeepers. And on top of that, there are a few new ones for outfield players, including aerial, which is going to allow you to focus on a player's heading and bravery, crossing, which is all about, crossing, as you can imagine, and technique, and also ball control. So if you've got a player who maybe has really good passing but lacks in perhaps first touch and dribbling, that can be a focus you can put in there, the ball control to help with, I think it's first touch, technique and dribbling off the top of my head. It's a really small addition, really big one though in the grand scheme of things. I feel like it's going to help you to improve those players. Sometimes you felt like you had to train a player in a specific role because otherwise it was impossible to focus on some of the weaknesses in their game in certain attributes. That's been addressed this year. Lovely little change, really rate it. Thank you to whoever SI cooked that one up. In at number 6, we have the new contract and transfer negotiations. This is one that marries up with a feature we'll have coming up soon. But basically, there is lots of new stuff with contract and transfer negotiations. The screens themselves have had a big overhaul this year. There is new features such as the ability to have multiple buyback clauses after different periods of time. As I said, it ties in really well with the new Playtime Roles. You can plan a pathway into the first team for a youngster. So when you go to negotiate with them in past years, of course, you'd promise maybe captaincy, or, you teach them a certain language, or promise them that they'd play a certain position. In this year's game, you can promise them their squad role at different points. So if you've got a young 18-year-old, you can say to them, hey, you can come for us. First year, you're going to be a fringe player in the first team. Second year, we're going to start integrating you into the third team. And then by the third season, you're going to be a first choice player for us. I really like that as an addition. I think it works really nicely. And also, just on the negotiation pages as a whole, the information is a lot more nicely laid out. You can clearly see a bar that represents an agent's patience during negotiations. When you're negotiating, it feels a bit more responsive, a bit more feedback. Everything just feels a bit cleaner. And of course, having nice 3D backgrounds in terms of areas, just for a bit of staging, are a nice touch. And as you move up through the leagues, you'll see the 3D backgrounds within FM20 change, which again, more flavour, looks nice, really rate it. And some of the new additions in terms of functionality for negotiations are much welcome. In at number 5, we have the new Playtime Roles, and I already talked about this, but this year in Football Manager, there is no longer key players, first team players, rotation, backup, prospect, and youngster. That's gone, those 6. There are a lot more of these now. You have fringe players, squad players, key squad players, star players. It's great, and it really helps to differentiate players' playtime. I know a big struggle for people has been players complaining about lack of first team football, and you're not sure exactly what they're expecting. Now, because there are way more areas on the scale in terms of how much football a player is expecting, you can nicely do things. In the past, you might have one rotation player who is a little bit of a, coming in every other game, whereas there might be another player who you're only going to play during midweek games. Now, with the new roles, there's a lot more flexibility there. When it comes to goalkeepers as well, there's a lot of new statuses that you can have in terms of playing time. So you have continental keeper, cup keeper, emergency backup. If you've got an injury crisis, your third choice keeper's probably only going to come in then. And again, it just adds a lot more depth to things. And I'm hoping, although I didn't really get to experience this myself, that in having way more options in terms of how much playtime you promise players, it's going to be a lot easier to keep them happy by giving them the amount of football they expect. And with the new playtime expectation view on this squad overview screen, that is going to be easier as well. So again, 2 lovely little additions there, the new screen, the new variety of squad roles. Really, really looking forward to getting my teeth into this and using it going forward. In at number 4, we have the new Code of Conduct. Yes, this is a cool little addition. I've seen a lot of people talking about this on Twitter, and it's nice. Basically, when you join a club, you're able to set your expectations for the team, and you're able to automate fines and such. Obviously, in previous years, you'd go and fine a player for getting a few too many red cards or yellow cards, and they might get unhappy, they might feel harshly treated. When you join a club now, you can outline, hey, when you do this disciplinary thing, this is the punishment you're going to get. And as you'll see on the example on screen, if you go way harsher than your captain suggests, some players won't be happy. I found it really interesting, actually, that in the example you can see where I'm managing Arsenal, of course, on the Arsenal edition of Football Manager that you can buy in the Arsenal store, a lot of the younger players really didn't like the fact I was making things stricter. And within the younger player social group, they all kind of ganged up on me a little bit. Obviously, that'll be interesting to see going forward. Right now, in the alpha build, this lives within the finances screen. I think that is subject to change, so it may look different when you guys get your hand on the beta in a couple of weeks. But for me personally, I felt like it was just a really nice addition. And obviously, automating the fining process for missing training, underperforming, is really good in my opinion. It's something that always felt like a little bit of a chore in game. And it's just going to add a little bit more flavour to how you approach things as a leader and as a manager in Football Manager 2020. In at number 3, we have one of the big new additions this year, the Youth Development Graphs. Yes, of course, the Youth Development Centre is a brand new landmark feature in Football Manager. It's one that I wasn't able to fully experience because I didn't get to play too much of the game whilst I was kind of hands-on early. But one thing that really stuck out to me was the graphs and how you can monitor player developments. There are now screens where At merely a quick look, you can see how all your youngsters have been doing recently, be that declining in training, improving in training. You then have the ability to click on them and view kind of how their overall ability might have changed, as well as obviously the older system of being able to view individual attributes. Really like this as a change. It's just an easier way to keep on top of things. If you watch Leon Live, my FM19 series, we got to a point where our academy was really filled out with players, and it became near impossible to keep on top of who was actually developing. And sometimes it would take maybe 9 months into the future for me to go, oh, damn, this guy in my under-23s is actually really good now. I feel like with the new Youth Development Centre and the new graphs that you can see really easily and just how that information in terms of development is laid out, this becomes 10 times easier, and I absolutely love it. I can't wait to use it in my longer-term saves. It's going to make things easier. It's going to look really good as well. And yeah, it's a much welcome addition to the game that I can already envisage myself getting a hell of a lot of use out of. Anyway, in at number 2, we have the new youth intake system. I'm going to be covering this and more of the youth development stuff in a video upcoming in the next few days. So if you want to hear more about what I've talked about today, keep an eye out for that. Obviously, subscribe to the channel so you know when it's coming. But yes, the youth intake system in this year's game has changed. And to my knowledge, Regen Day doesn't exist anymore as a concept where country by country the Regen Day is the same. I've seen teams within England in different leagues have different Regen Days at different points. Now, I don't know if it's club specific, division specific, or exactly how it works yet, but it's improved and it feels less cheesable. So just to give you a brief overview, as I said, I will go into this in more detail soon. Your youth intake is now a tab in the Youth Development Centre. It's kind of acknowledged as a thing rather than just being a singular news item that you get. And it will build up over a number of months, 3 or 4 months before the intake month. You'll be informed of just a brief overview of how the youngsters are looking, certain positions that you're going to have players coming through in, if you should be expecting a lot, any potential players that your head of youth development might be trying to poach from other teams before they generate as a physical player in game. And that's something to keep an eye on. If you're a bigger club, you will find your head of youth development poaching youngsters before they kind of generate with profiles, essentially in the back end of the game for players under the age of 16. They are moving around a little bit, which is cool. But yeah, this whole system is just way better. And then when it comes around to Regen Day, and I will say now the Regen faces you see on screen are not final. They're way too shiny. Sports Interactive have acknowledged that. I've been assured they're going to look better. But basically, the way that the Regen intake is laid out is just really nice. There's loads of new views now, so you can see who you're offering contracts to. You can see who the top rated ones are, how much money you're offering each of them. And it feels a lot more like a big event in game that kind of Football Manager is acknowledging. Previously, as I said, you kind of just had the intake days happen, and that was like a single email item, and that was that. Now having its own dedicated area, it's really nice, and it just adds another layer of depth, and I'm hoping in years going forward it's going to develop, it's going to become a less cheesable thing, and yeah, I really love this change. It's so good, it's much welcome. Kind of different to what I would have done with intakes, but at the same time, at least with my brief experience with it, it's a huge addition, and whilst I know not everyone is a fan of regens, for me personally, it's drastically going to shake up how I play Football Manager this year. So finally, in at number 1, there's one feature that you've already seen all over Twitter, I imagine, that I've not talked about today, and it's the Club Vision stuff. This, I think, is going to fundamentally change Football Manager going forward, and I know that might sound like an exaggeration. I'm going to talk about it briefly here. I could talk about this for a while. But Club Vision now, basically every single team plays differently in Football Manager. When you pick a team to manage, you are really going to want to weigh up what the chairman and what the club want, because the clubs themselves are going to have their own cultures. These are expectations or requirements. It might be a certain style of play, signing a certain type of player. And I know someone's going to say, well, what's the difference between these and philosophies? The difference is you can't remove these as easily. If you don't abide by them, you will be punished. If you're being asked to sign domestic players and you go out and sign 10 South American regions, your board will start blocking transfers. They will say, hey, you are not listening to what we said. You can't do that. It makes every team feel way more unique. From my brief time playing it, I really started to feel the effects of things. It was making me approach different situations differently, and I couldn't just play Football Manager my own way. I feel like now when you play FM, you're going to have to think way more about who you're managing and why you want to manage them, which I think is absolutely great. As I said, you can't just ignore them. And if you do start ignoring them, you are going to feel the pressure. And on top of this, you also have the 5-year plans where you'll be given a roadmap for the club going forward. Sometimes it'll be that after 3 years, a chairman says, hey, I'm looking to sell the club after 3 years, deal with it. And the other cool thing is that some of these club cultures and expectations will be tied to the club themselves. Some are tied to the owners. So you might be managing a club 2 years into a 5-year plan. They decide to sell the club out of the blue. And suddenly a new chairman comes in and has a whole new way he wants the club to be run. And I feel like these kind of dynamic events, whilst I wasn't really able to experience them firsthand, are going to change Football Manager fundamentally. They are going to be big changes for long-term players of the game. I think it's going to give you a reason to want to play longer as well. Really buying into projects. In the past, you kind of just had to make them up in your head. Now they are literally in the game. It's absolutely fantastic as a principle. I feel like it's only going to improve as a concept going forward. Now it can be built upon so much. And if you can't tell by the way I'm talking, I am really, really excited about it. And it's for that reason it is in at number 1. It is a huge addition to the game. Loads of potential going forward. Yes, Club Vision's going to be a game changer. I am positive of that. Anyway, guys, that is just a few of the features that I am most excited about in FM20. Let me know which of these really stood out to you. As I said, lots of content coming your way in the near future. Just as a reminder, the content that you see is in this video is just alpha footage. It is early, it is subject to change. Stuff like the regen phases, I've seen newer versions. It looks way better. I'm really, really excited because they are a big improvement on last year's game. And of course, I am running on the special Arsenal edition of the game, hence why Arsenal are licensed. If you just buy the regular edition, that won't be the case for you. I want to get that out there here and now. But yes, that is all from me today. Thank you for watching. If you're new around here and you enjoyed this video, do subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you felt about the information I brought you, what stood out to you, exciting stuff, all that jazz. Drop a like if you enjoyed. That is all from me today. It is me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.